Just to backtrack a little, so we have a guest speaker. His name is Jamey Wetmore from ASU. And so, yeah, you're a co-host if you want to provide slides, or we can just sit and talk because we're going to do the activity with the paper, that stack of paper cards that you had. So if you have those handy, you should grab them.
And Angela, I'm doing this. I guess it's not old school because we are talking over video phone, but I am doing this without sharing my screen.
Okay, no problem. That's fine. Yeah.
Increases the chances that this will work.
Okay.
So.
Yeah, I don't think we've ever done this before, right? Or Jamey, have you done this before online?
I have actually, but not with a group this big. So I'm excited to do it with a group this big. So, how much time do we have, Angela?
So we have as much as you want, like till 11 if you want, or as short as 30 minutes. So we're pretty flexible.
Okay, well, I didn't know if we wanted to do, oh, yep, that's the card right there. I didn't know if people wanted to do quick introductions or if you guys are all just dead tired of doing introductions.
Well, I think you should introduce yourself for sure. I don't know, yeah, but I think for the sake of time, maybe let's not do.
We won't do too many introductions. Yeah, so the question is, what do these cards look like?
Yeah.
There we go.
Yes.
This is high tech right here. When I'm talking to Stanford University, I tape pieces of paper to the wall and then I shine a camera on them.
But you can also, if you can't find them easily, I put the activity in the chat box so you can play with the PDF version. I'm gonna do the PDF version.
Yeah, and you won't actually need these for what we're gonna do right here.
Yeah.
They might help a little bit, but it's not necessary. So thank you, Angela. So my name is Jamey Wetmore. I've been doing, I was part of a Nanotechnology and Society Center at Arizona State University, which, geez, I think that was 15 years ago that started now. Crazy. But one of the most exciting things that I did as part of that, so my training is in, I do a lot of work on the relationship between technology and society. So how are people impacted by technology? How do people make decisions about technology? And what are the possible impacts of technology, but also how do people push back against technology? And one of the most exciting things I did as part of this Center for Nanotechnology and Society was begin working with science museums. So I don't know how many of you are familiar with NISEnet. So NISEnet originally was the nanoscale. If you hear screaming in the background, that's my 2.5-year-old. So I'm told she's going for a walk soon, but in the meantime, just enjoy the dulcet tones. So it was NISEnet originally stood for the Nanoscale Informal Science Education Network, and it was an attempt to bring nanotechnology into science museums. And then they very quickly realized that a lot of the tools they created worked well for K-12 classrooms as well, and summer camps, and Girl Scouts, and Boy Scouts, and I can't remember all the other things, children's museums. And after about 5 years where they were really focused on things like how do you get kids or adults for that matter to understand scale, how do you get them to understand special properties, they wanted to dive a little more deeply into the social side of things. And they were a little concerned about doing it because if you're in a science museum and you think about sort of social questions, for some reason the first thing everybody thinks of is, oh, now I'm blanking. first thing everybody thinks of is Darwin. Everybody thinks of evolution and thinking about which of their guests they would be alienating once they start talking about things like that, and which ones would come with a grudge and want to really push back. And so we decided to, there's far too much to talk about with nano and society that has nothing to do with hot button issues that get you on the front page of the newspaper immediately. So we were far more interested in helping people explore values and the relationships between values and technology. And the game you're about to play started with something called Nano Around the World. And I don't know if anybody's played Nano Around the World. This is a game where there's 20 players and you get a character and then you sort of interact with technology cards. I'm seeing Angela shaking her head back and forth, but I'm pretty sure you've been suffered and had to play that game at least once, right?
I've played once, but I don't think anyone else has.
Okay. So that game was designed for adults and works pretty well in high schools as well. But some of my colleagues at the Science Museum said, well, hey, you know what? Most of the people that come to our museums aren't adults, their families, their children. And so the game we're about to play was developed for younger kids, but actually ended up working really, really well with all ages. And actually, I think it works really well with families too. So we're going to start by just jumping into it, and then we'll debrief what happened afterwards. But do I have a volunteer to start with? Can people talk, Angela? Are they allowed to speak?
Yes, everyone should be able to unmute themselves.
Okay.
Yeah.
All right. So I have 5 nanotechnologies here on the wall. Actually, technically, they're not nanotechnologies. These are technologies that scientists doing work in the nano realm believe are possible and that they would like to create for the future. So right now, officially, I don't believe any of these exists in a form that could be purchased at the store. So the question for my good volunteer, whoever you choose to be, is, can you rank these in order from most important to least important? Anybody want to volunteer? And Angela, I can't see whether people have raised hands or not.
No problem. I think
feel
Dustin
free to call.
may have wanted to. Oh, or Usha.
All right. Well, why don't we? Did you say Dustin? Why don't we do Dustin and then Usha second?
Okay. Perfect.
Okay.
All right, Dustin. Can you see all of the options that are up there?
I can't read the small text, but I can read the stuff at the top and see the pictures. So.
Okay. Yep, yeah. That should be enough for now.
So I think the most important thing is going to start with water filter.
Water filter, okay.
And then let's just put space elevator as least important for now.
We're going straight there, okay.
Yeah, let's. I think lab on a chip is second important.
Okay.
I don't know what a shell is. I don't know if I'm allowed to ask what a nano shell is.
Yeah. So let me tell you real quick. So these gold nano shells could be used to fight cancer.
Oh.
The idea is that you encase the medicine you need the nano shell lines it up with a cancerous cell, and then it dissolves, and then the medicine goes directly at the cancerous cell.
Okay, so I think I want to switch drone robots and nanoshells, and then that's my final answer.
That's your final answer. You're locked in, is that right?
Yeah, I think so.
All right. Now, we got to a little of this as we talked about it, but I'm curious as to why teabag water filter is number 1 on your list.
I think that has the biggest chance of increasing the well-being of the most human lives for technology that we already have, and for cost and economics.
So you are thinking globally, you're thinking about most help for most people.
Yeah.
All right. And space elevator, you very quickly shuffled to the end. The coolest of all these technologies, I might add, you just dismissed.
Yes, and I'm a space sci-fi nerd, so...
so it was a little hard for you to do that.
Yeah, I think for the I think it's just kind of relates to how realistic the physics of a space elevator is, and skepticism for space elevators, and I just see more urgent issues that have a higher probability of being successful.
All right, so you sort of have a technical / economic argument here. Yeah. The technical argument is that unlikely that this is possible in any real sense in the near future, so let's put our money and effort in places where we think we can make a difference.
Yeah.
Okay, I'll buy that. And we got lab on a chip and nano shells.
Mm-hmm.
Why that order?
I originally, that was one of the ones I think are pretty close, but I think lab on a chip will actually be able to give us more. I think it's a better investment, but I could definitely be swayed another way. But from just the brief time I had and my understanding, that lab on a chip has a better opportunity to increase technology and speed of devices and other devices that can be used in the medical field to do more good. and I don't know enough about nanoshells to know how those could work. But I think that the ability for lab on a chip to help people using increasing technology in the medical field can do more than nanoshells, from my very terrible and ignorant understanding of those technologies.
Okay. One quick thing, as you all are playing this, you'll see that, we've got the card. It's got this one has 6-word explanation of what it is at the bottom. When you flip them over, you get the 30-word explanation of what it is. So you can gradually become more expert in the technology with the card.
I mean, I have them all right. I have probably like 20 of them right here.
Oh yeah, no, this was not a critique in any way of your gameplay. It was excellent, Dustin. It's just sort of as you're playing it, if people are interested in knowing more, you've got a little extra information.
Yeah, this is great.
All right, so we had somebody else who volunteered to be second, and I apologize, I've forgotten your name, and I'm really, really upset that I can't watch the chat right now because it looks like there's 11 posts and I'm missing really good stuff. But I'm going to just keep going. You guys talk about me all you want behind my back.
Honestly, it was me, but I actually would just go with what Dustin has said.
Oh, okay.
My ideas are exactly the same.
Oh, okay.
Yeah,
I need somebody who thinks Dustin is off his rocker and needs to be reevaluated. So who's disagreeing with this?
I don't think Dustin is off his rockers, but I will disagree. I started out with what Dustin was saying. I did start out with water filter, but now that I think about it some more, I'm thinking the tiny chips to scan diseases would be better for our sakes right now because we need something quick, fast to determine who has COVID. That's what I was thinking.
Yeah, so my guess is that, and this is interesting, right? The gameplay depends on when you're playing it. I think that's absolutely right. If this lab on a chip could quickly and easily detect COVID-19, my guess is that most of us would put that pretty close to the top right now. Janet, did you have your hand raised? It's interesting. A lot of times when I play this game, I would critique that just a little bit. I sometimes get a little worried about technologies that tell us what's wrong, but we have no way to fix it. So I can tell you have 20 different diseases, but I can't give you a cure for any of them. That seems a little debilitating to me. Right? But right now, with the situation that we're in, actually knowing, I think, would go a long, long way to helping us fight. So, yeah.
Okay,
all right, anybody? Oh, yeah, go ahead.
I read about the space elevators on my article.
Okay.
And it actually said that it would save millions of dollars, millions, billions of dollars if we had a space elevator. I mean, let's pretend that it was cheap to produce it. But then after that, it's like, I forgot the number, but a ton of money per pound to send things into space. So eventually that would probably save us billions, trillions of dollars. So maybe I would put that before drone robot, because it says that it's used in warfare.
Okay, so you're going to move warfare to the end.
Yes.
And
but I do like the rest of them.
Put space elevator here. Yeah, my guess is, I don't have a back of the envelope, but my guess is it's going to be trillions to make something like this work. What's bigger than trillions? I forget, but it might be that too.
Can I? Now I'm going to raise my hand.
Yeah.
So I was reading the back, and technically, gold nanoshells can also detect or possibly lead to detection of disease.
Oh, interesting.
Would that be like maybe more applications than lab on the chip?
So the idea, so maybe the idea is you can just inject gold nanoshells in anybody, and they may or may not find cancer. But if they find cancer, they'll take care of them. So you get.
Is it limited to cancer, or can it be manipulated for like a general?
I think the idea here is that the technology could be used to target specific cells and areas of a body that need medicine or some sort of intervention. Yeah, and actually, I'm thinking there's a couple different technologies. I think I'm confusing them right now. I think some of the gold nanoshells, they might be the ones where they latch onto the area of the body that needs work, and then you excite them with a magnet, and they heat up, and that's what kills the cells. Some of the nano medicine stuff the shell targets the area and then dissolves and then releases the medicine. So a few different ways here.
I mean, I would switch lab on a chip and gold nano shells. That's just me.
Got it. Got it. All right. Oh, okay, I see. So you'd leave teabag water filter where it is.
Oh yes, I think
Got
that's a good one.
All right.
Oh, no.
Nobody really seems interested in mini drone robots. One thing that I do in this game, and you have character cards as well, if people have your character cards. Unfortunately, I don't have it, but one of our character cards is an Iraqi soldier. Now, if you were playing the role of an Iraqi soldier, is this the order that you would have them in? Does anybody want to role play being an Iraqi soldier? That's kind of a awkward thing to ask people to do.
Sure, I can do it.
All right, great.
All right, so am I looking at this and from the vantage point of an Iraqi soldier?
Yeah, exactly.
Okay, and reordering things?
Yep.
Let's see. So food and drinkable water are short supply, so I'm gonna put water filter first. I'm going to take drone robot and put it right behind there. I think lab on a chip would be next. Space elevator would be last, and then I'd move the nano. Yeah, just like that.
I'm trying to figure out if you are a soldier in the field, regardless of where. Are gold nano shells or a space elevator going to help you at all?
No, and my issues are much more present, and I'm thinking about the next couple days. I'm not thinking about the next couple generations of technology.
So what if I was to remove space elevator and add, again, my favorite card, the invisibility cloak, into the mix?
Ooh, I would put that probably right around drone robots. I don't know, before or after. Probably after drone robots.
Got it. Interesting. So if you haven't got the drone robots, maybe you can stay far enough away from people they'll never even come close to seeing you.
Yeah.
So this invisibility cloak card is my favorite, in part because when we stumbled across that photo and it was legal to reproduce it, we got so excited, because you don't know how long it took to find an image, a publicly available image for an invisibility cloak that would work. But the other thing that I love about it is I can play an entire game just with that one card. So one of my favorite engagements with elementary school students is to show them that card, to talk through about it. Most of them, of course, either have read Harry Potter or have some idea of Harry Potter. And I asked them, if I would give you an invisibility cloak, would you take it or would you like it? And their eyes almost always immediately light up and they smile and they get very excited. And then I asked them, okay, what would you do if you had an invisibility cloak? And then then they get even more excited. Do people have cookie jars anymore? I don't know if people have cookie jars, but whatever the functional equivalent of the cookie jar is in modern households, that's usually immediately where the kids go to. And sometimes spying on brothers. Sometimes it's sneaking out of the house. But there's usually a number of not horrible things that they suggest they'll do with the invisibility cloak, but the little transgressions that, as an 8 to 10-year-old, you would love to do. And then I asked them, well, what if your brother? I asked them if they have an older brother or sister, and often they do. And I asked, well, what if your older brother or sister had one of these? And then their faces turned white, and the realization that their brother or sister might have one of these and they don't is one of the most terrifying things they can possibly think of. And you have never seen a 9-year-old more immediately ask for government intervention and regulation of a technology than just discuss the invisibility cloak with them. So for me, it's just like this great example to help them think through the enormous ramifications of technology, and a somewhat science fiction concept, but enough for them to really grasp some of the stakes at hand here. So we have a few other characters that I sometimes use. So Mother in Mozambique. The game that this comes from has 20 different character cards, and you can actually play that with these as well. And each of the cards gives you a little information about the person. So Belita is 33 years old. She's a farmer and a craftswoman, and her salary is $2,000 a year. She lives in a rural village with no electricity, and she has no transportation to get her to a health clinic. So when you start to think about the values and needs of a person like that, it's really, really different than most of the people we directly play the game with. And I think as a result, you end up moving the cards around significantly when you role play. There's a little bit of a danger there, because in the end, we aren't a mother in Mozambique, and we don't know exactly what a life is like for somebody like that. But I think the major goal there is to get the students to begin to realize that different decisions are made by different people, and they're not right or wrong decisions, but different people have different needs. So before I go on any more, do we have questions or comments on what we've done so far?
This is a great activity. I think I like that it's so diverse, multicultural. It takes us out of science and into, like you said, the humanities. So thank you for sharing it.
Yeah, absolutely. And I think you got sent the link, or you got actually the card sent to you to the game You Decide. If you really want to take this international, you can play the same exact game with additional characters. And so the original game is a game called Nano Around the World. And there are 20 characters in it. And each character represents 1/5 of the world's population. And we tried to do as best we could to make that as representative as possible. So as a result, only one of the 20 character cards is from North America, because North America has 5% of the world's population. Asia has half the world's population, so 10 of the character cards come from Asia. And then we have a variety. You saw the mother in Mozambique, who has a salary of $2,000 a year and has no electricity and has health issues. That is a very different perspective than the North American person is a female college professor, I believe, who rides her bike to work. So actually, I think representing one of my colleagues. But it begins to make you realize, in some ways, just how big the world is. The game was actually originally created as a response to the argument that nanotechnology was going to make everyone's lives better. And the game is a chance to sort of step back and say, okay, that sounds great. How is it going to help this person? And it's usually a person that most of the designers of nanotechnology haven't thought about. So there are some riffs and different ways to play the game. It can be done in a very quick, it can be done literally in 5 minutes by having the person put the cards in the order that they would want. And then having them, the major step is not just to put them in the order, but to get them to articulate out loud the values, that is the reasoning behind the order that they've created. But then I think the extra layer of the game is particularly interesting when you have somebody, again, not critique it, but revise the way they would see things. And in that revision, you get two realizations. You get one is that there are discussions to be had here about what are the most important values. But then there's also the realization that different people have different values, and actually that may be okay. One of the big concerns when we started talking about nano in society with science museums was, okay, do we have to spend a lot of time labeling specific technologies as good and specific technologies as bad? And one of our major goals was saying, no, it's a lot more complex than that. That what's really good for one person may be horrible for another person, and vice versa. And getting people to say, let's not ask, is this a good or bad technology? Let's ask, who is this good for? And then we can make a decision as to whether or not that's where you want to invest. So one little riff, we can, are those real people on the character cards? Oh, I'm sorry, I'm actually responding to a chat because it popped up in time for me to see. They are not real people. They're all fictional people. I desperately wanted to make my Bratislavan Eurovision singer to be a friend of mine, but she wouldn't let me. So in the end, they are all fictional people. But all of the names, for instance, are based on people from that country. All of the careers and the salaries are based on something that would be very real within the country itself. One of my favorite cards as well, which we don't have here, is we have an Indian cricket star. So the wealthiest player in the game is from India, who makes something like $3 million a year. And yeah, look up the card. I think he probably is what most people consider devastatingly handsome. So his life is doing pretty well right now. So to sort of realize that we have a wide variety of people all over the world. Where was I? Oh, so one way you can play the game as well, if you want to do a little riff on it, is you can have the students invent their own cards. So if they've been introduced to nanotechnology a little bit, and they've begun to see some different needs and values that maybe these cards aren't meeting, they can design their own nanotechnology, and then you can replay the game with an additional card. You can have them do a little bit of research to figure out some things that aren't in the deck already. One of my favorite ways to play the game is to make the players a government organization with some funding money. And so not only do you choose the order in which from most important to least important, you decide how to distribute money amongst it. And that gets a little interesting. So for instance, in the ones we have up here right now, you know, $10 million would go a long way to helping develop a water filter, but you might need $10 billion to design an invisibility cloak. And so you've got to decide two levels, not just which is most important, but you know, might you divvy up money differently depending on your values and what might be possible? Or do you look at this and realize, okay, my guess is that teabag water filters, mini drone robots, and lab on a chip are the most possible things, so our biggest bang for the buck is there. So you get some interesting conversations, not just about values and what's most important, but how do you best practically further those values? One way I really enjoy doing this as well is with families. And I don't know how many of you have that option, but you have the child do it first, and then you ask the parent to do their version of it. And then all of a sudden you have a discussion about values between the parents and the child about a topic that's, you know, shouldn't be too many hard issues in a conversation like that. More questions? Were there questions that came up that I missed in the chat along the way? I'm more than happy to address those now.
I think they're pretty. I think you answered most of them. I wanted to just add like an anecdote. So I was helping a colleague in Atlanta at Georgia Tech implement the same workshop here, and we did this, but we did the Nano around the world, and it was really fun, and everyone came in person because you can sort of, they're kind of like trading cards with the nanotechnologies, and at one point one teacher had traded all of the nanotechnology, but she, I think, was like a mother in Mozambique or somebody random, and it made no sense to have all this technology, but the end goal was for them to actually write their own storyline on, you know, how this technology or all these technologies would help them in their life. And it was really fun because they got very creative when it came to writing the story that they had.
Yeah, so I don't know what ages you all teach, but I think anywhere from, I'm trying to think the first time I think I've done it with 9th through 12th graders. I think that's as young as I've gone with the big game, the Nano Around the World game. That's a game that you can play many times. And as Angela says, right now what we're doing with these cards is you tell a very short little story. But in the other game, the people play much more, role play their character, and have they come up with the craziest, biggest, most insane stories I've ever heard. But they really engage with the technologies and thinking about how they might mobilize them to benefit their character. And for me, it's really, really exciting. The other thing that's exciting about that is the strategies that the players use. Sort of, I set the game up as their somewhat in competition with each other. Their goal is to gather the technologies they think will benefit their character. And some of the players will then, one of my favorite instances in the game was one of the players said, okay, that's it. Everybody put your cards down, put your characters up. We're going to redistribute all these technologies to the people who need it the most, and we're going to benefit the most people possible. And everybody sat down. It was almost like a United Nations, some sort of world governance role-playing that this student was pushing. And that worked for about 30 seconds. And at that point, everybody in the room rebelled, threw up their hands, and started competing against each other. And I was like, it's just like the real thing, right? So you really can reinterpret all these social interactions in the game in ways that really do happen between people and technologies. And one of the things that we do in that, and actually you can do with things like the mother in Mozambique, is we can put these technologies in an order, and then we say, oh, wait a second, she lives in a rural village with no access to health care, no transportation, and no electricity. Okay, how beneficial are these technologies now? And you can begin to think about the context that these people live in, not just the technologies, and realize that it's not just a single technology that you drop in that fixes things. You have to have the broader systems to allow those technologies to work as well. And that can go into, so actually that comes out a little bit, I think, when we role play the Iraqi soldier. I think most of the people that role play that realize that this person, you know, isn't going to be able to quickly and easily go to a hospital, that there are lots of other factors, and getting, refilling batteries and getting drinking water is usually near the top of the list.
Yeah, that's great, Jamey. Does anyone have any questions? Did you guys get a chance to like look through the cards? Is anyone, you know, feeling more Iraqi soldier than anything else?
So just one thing to note to everybody, and this is the way that all the NISENet, do you guys use NISENet activities?
I showed them a few of them, but I didn't really give them the whole spiel about NISENet.
Okay. So one really, really nice thing about NISENet is that almost all the activities, many of the tabletop activities, which this would be called a tabletop demonstration in museum world, are designed to be able for somebody, not quite off the street, but certainly anybody with your level of expertise in educating students, to be able to very quickly read a 2-page document that describes how it works, how to set up, what's the background that you need to know. And so literally within 10 to 15 minutes, you have enough training to at least begin to use the activity. So you've gotten a little longer version here, but and this is all downloadable. When you go to the NISENet website, these cards are all downloadable, plus all of the teaching guide, and also the 2-page really quick and dirty, how do I get moving on this? So I use NISENet stuff all the time whenever I do an engagement activity, even within the university. Actually, I use them in my university undergrad and grad courses as well. But whenever I'm out giving a presentation at an arts fair or something like that, I'll go to the NISENet activities, pull down 2 or 3, and then I'm ready to go. And again, about half-hour worth of prep, and I'm able to run the activity. So if you're integrating this into a lesson plan and building a lot more deeper, it's certainly, as you all know, a bit more work, but a lot of the basics and how to deploy it are right there.
Oh, we got a thank you from Kritika.
Woohoo!
Woohoo! Yeah.
I gotta look back at the shirt. I gotta look back at the chat. That salary is outrageous.
It is, yeah.
Yeah, I think in the end we chose a diversity, which means that if you add up everybody's salary and divide by the number of players, it's higher than the average salary in the world. But you have to have some of the diversity in there as well. Oh, I should give you a little background on some of this technology as well. So the ones that we played with here, Lab on a Chip is something probably most universities are doing some work on right now, which is really the idea of quickly and easily figuring out what somebody's disease profile would look like, what they've been exposed to, and possibly what genetically they're predisposed to. There's a lot of excitement to be able to do that kind of things quickly and easily. There's a little bit of a social political critique of How does your life change? Does your life change for the better if you know you have an 8% more likely to get a specific disease than a random person off the street? There is a possibility that the amount of knowledge you would get from this would be debilitating, especially if the majority of things that you can do, you can't actually do anything about. The teabag water filter is a frustrating technology to me. So we created this game about 10 years ago, and the teabag water filter was supposed to come out within a year or two. It was a South Africa project. South Africa did some interesting stuff with Nano, where within the government mandate of all the funding was that the technology had to benefit lots and lots of different people. And so a lot of the work was done on things like remediation of the environmental impact of mining, something that would help lots and lots of villages in South Africa. And the teabag water filter was supposed to really help people living in small rural villages. It almost came out, and the funny thing is, of course, the market for it in the end looked to be backpackers from the US and Europe. But they never did quite release it. So, and the invisibility cloak is actually something that they're working on. If you go online, you can see some demonstrations of how Nano can make some things disappear visually. I think most of the work that's doing in that area is pretty clunky, but it is possible to pretty well obscure something even as large as a car, at least from certain angles. So it is less science fiction than you might think. And if you're doing a class exercise with these technologies, again, there's always the option to have students do a little research to find out a little deeper what's going on with it, and maybe even have them do their own analysis of how likely they think these technologies are. But even as crazy as the space elevator is, NASA has poured a significant amount of money into doing research on the topic. So it's not, it's a little crazy, but it's not totally crazy.
All right. Well, thank you, Jamey. I think this is good. If there's no more questions, we can give Jamey like a virtual round of applause for his help and with everything. I think this is a really fun activity. It's a little hard to do online. I think definitely when we were in person, it was very vibrant. Everyone got really into it because I think people got competitive and it was kind of funny. But at the very least, this is a nice way to do it virtually. So yeah, thank you again, Jamey.
Yeah, and it's more fun when the players themselves have their hands on the cards and they're pulling it from somebody else and moving it
ripping it away.
Yeah. And you can always print out another deck, so if they rip it up, it's fine.
Yeah. All right.
Thank you so much for your time, and
thanks for joining us.
Good luck with it.
Yeah, thanks. I'm going to give you guys some context on what other sort of nanotechnologies are available to us currently. There's actually a website that's solely dedicated to recording all the consumer nano products that are available to us, which I can share. I forget it right now, but there are nano silver socks. You've probably seen them. I think you can buy them on Amazon, but they're nano silver socks or coated pants where they're water repellent. The socks just are kind of antibacterial. A lot of pregnancy tests have, little sensors that are nanoscale that, when you pee on it, then it will detect. I think I showed this the other day. It will tell you the ripeness of a fruit. And then all these over here are more like encapsulation. So making these little nano capsules, kind of like what we did with the self-assembly, that will break apart on contact to make sure, it's holding on to whatever the active ingredient is. Tennis, I like playing tennis. They have a lot of rackets that have a lot of carbon fiber, so it's light but also sturdy. Also the same thing with bats. And then the sunscreen, we also kind of talked about again yesterday, where there's some smaller nanoparticles in the sunscreen to really make it a little bit more transparent, but more effective, or just as effective as regular. Okay, let's see. There's also a lot of biotechnology, and I wanted to especially share this. I know someone had asked about sort of the life sciences side of things. So there's all sorts of projects. Jamey mentioned the lab on a chip, which is more like on the upper right-hand side. There's also all different types of drug delivery methods, right? So using these microneedles to make more painless injections, or even like a patch, kind of like those nicotine patches, but the needles would be so small, they would just sort of deliver drug over a long period of time. Also, lots of things that are injected or embedded into your body to make sure you're monitoring your heartbeat and things like that. They also have band-aids that have silver nanoparticles in them, again for the antibacterial properties. Oh, and they have even these little, I think they're called stents, maybe. I don't actually know the right word, but if your artery is clogged, it will help basically a scaffold to support your veins. A lot of nanomaterials go into dental wear, like the ceramics that go on your teeth. They harden really quickly. Part of that is because the surface area, so they're very likely have nanoparticles in them to sort of distribute that UV sensitive material. And again, more implantables. Actually, I have a friend, she worked on implantable technology for bones, like restorative stuff. And she discovered that with especially some of these, I think they're generally titanium, if the titanium is too smooth, the bone won't sort of accept it. The actual titanium material has to be sort of nano bumpy in order for it to accept it. So I think that's kind of interesting as well. Like there was a very clear distinction between how well the body could adapt to it. And then also metal. This is actually typically the metal here is memory metal, so it will like meld to your base, which is kind of nano related, and the nanomaterials too, because they're strong. All right, and then we have obviously electronics. We talked a little bit about it as well. Oh, and then this is another view of the wafers, right? The wafers that I was talking about. Again, there's multiple different sizes, different colors, and then eventually, you put these thin films down and you make a device by putting different patterns and stacking them together. Excuse me. We have a really outdated photo of an iPhone. Flash drives, all right, they're portable technology. Remember floppy disks, or not just floppy disks, the ones that were hard, I forgot what they're called, the plastic zip drives, that's one. There was another one that was thinner. Anyway, all that stuff, you can all store like 7 of those on one tiny flash drive now, right? So again, flexible electronics, dunkable technology, like my phone can get wet, no big deal. You can go swimming with your Apple Watch. Quantum dots, again, we talked about it as well. And this one, I think, is just a really tiny chip. All right. Also, a few things related to the Israeli soldier, but a lot of technology, which again, I sort of talked about. And they put a lot of funding into this, obviously, but big things. Actually, I was funded on a DITRA grant. What is that? Defense. Oh my God. DITRA, DT. Anyway, it was a defense grant, but it was to help treat soldiers with tularemia better, because when they're in, I think, the Middle East, that is, I think, a disease. So they would need a better way to sort of get healthy. So that was the whole point, is to deliver drugs more. Yes, Defense Threat Reduction Agency. Thank you. Anyway, it was a better way to deliver drugs, so we were funded on that. But there are all sorts of different types of materials. Obviously with defense, you want something that's light and strong. So there's all sorts of nanotechnology there, microchips, and then sensors to detect things that are coming, as well as to protect, or those cloaking devices that I was talking about with the invisibility cloak. But yeah, lots of money goes into that as well. All right. And then space, right? We already talked about the space elevator, so I won't go into that. But they also have all sorts of things for coatings. So for example, one really cool thing that happens is there's a special material that gets coated on most aircraft, where if there's a crack that occurs, the coating will actually sort of self-heal in case anything should happen on its way out of the space. So I think that's really cool. There's also things with charge dissipation. If there's a lot of energy floating around that gets hit, like a solar ray gets hit by the spacecraft. It will dissipate that using carbon nanotubes, and then all sorts of little sensors, usually that are on satellites, such as this electronic nose that will sense, made out of carbon nanotubes. All right, I think that is about it. Okay, and then these are some sort of magic thinking things ahead of schedule, but self-healing muscle, self-healing materials, nano tattoos, invisibility cloaks, nano sponges, so something that is like highly absorbent, super efficient. This one is attach ARPA-E. I think this is wearable tech. And then this is just drinking water. Again, one of those really easy filtering systems as well, right? Okay, so then going back, we're going to talk a little bit about our Nano story. Again, how do we get you to support, or how do we support you in teaching nanoscience, right? So, you know, we talked about what exactly is nanotechnology. We have a rough idea. How do we make and see nanotechnology? We have a rough idea. And today we sort of threw in the, you know, how does it apply to us? How does it apply to us as a society? And then obviously, the final big idea, the main takeaway is to really talk about how nanotechnology is an important field and impacts all different parts of our modern technology, as well as just our society in general. So, my mouse doesn't want to work. Okay, so we're going to spend some time in the next hour or so to spend time working on your lesson plans, but then also I'm going to put you in little groups to sort of ping pong ideas off of one another. I would say I think there's 14 of us, so maybe we can split into a few groups. I'll figure that out later. But I know some of you are teaching teams, so I'll obviously keep you together. But what I hope for you to do in the next half hour, obviously, is you know, talk about what the main idea you want to teach. How does it fit into the rest of your curriculum of that, you know, section? If you can describe your lesson in detail, that's great. And then, you know, how do you make sure it's equitable? And I think we'll add on, is it possible to make it remote or support it remotely? If not, you know what? That's okay, because we're not going to be in this pandemic forever, okay? So we got some time. And then this is just kind of a mini way to quickly present your idea. Again, it doesn't have to be fully fleshed out. You know, we have till the end of the day. You can go last if you want, kind of thing. All right? So we'll spend some time doing that. And then obviously this we can do, the timing is a little bit off, but I think it's just, and obviously we can't do it in person, but just we'll do a round robin of sharing. So maybe each group will spend about 10 minutes presenting in total, or 2 minutes to present, 2 minutes to give feedback, and then response. So that's 2, 4, 6. Okay, so it is 6, sorry. And then we'll switch. So we'll give you a full hour for this. And if you're not ready, you can also keep working. So let me know what you want, but otherwise I'm gonna put you into the little groups. Does that make sense? And I'll share this information to everybody. All right. Stop the share. Are we sharing after lunch? Yes, so after lunch will be our sort of, and I say this loosely, formal presentations. Okay, so that's where you'll be presenting as a group to the class. But this next hour is going to serve as work time, and then also any feedback time. So you can. Why is my computer not working? Okay, there we go. So basically, break it up into present quickly, feedback quickly, and then response to that feedback, and then keep going around and around. Does that make sense to everybody? All right. So I will put you into little breakout rooms. Jenny and Krithika, did you want to pop into any of the breakout rooms? Do you have any?
Do we have that kind of power?
I don't know if you can, well, I can put you in one, but I cannot, yeah. You don't have the power to pop in and out, I think.
Okay.
All right. And then, yeah, I will keep the pairs that I know that were together, like June and Joanne. I'll put you guys together. No problem. And then I think the other teaching pair was Vicky and Amrit, correct? I see maybe a nod. Okay. And then the other pair was Fiaz and Samantha, right? Yes, no, maybe.
I would say maybe that we should probably leave them alone in the breakout rooms, but I'm willing to stay during lunch and I'll work with anyone who's interested. If somebody requests, time, and Kritika probably would too. I mean, I'm always volunteering her for stuff, but
I was gonna say, if a breakout room like wants one of us as feedback, you can always drag us into one, right?
Yeah, I think so.
Okay.
I hope so. All right, I'm just currently separating you guys into groups. All right. Okay. Any questions other than that? Because oops.
When we're in our breakout rooms, are we able to share our screens with others?
You should be able to, I believe. Hold on. Move to breakout room 3. Okay. All right. So I mixed it up. Hopefully, I'm gonna start them now. There's no timer. Let me turn on my. Oh my god, okay. I will not have a timer. You can, and so yeah, you have the option of moving back to the main session. So Kritika, Jenny, and I will all be here. So don't worry. So if you need to come back, feel free to come back and ask us a question. It just might take some time to go back and forth. Okay. All right. So I am sending you all out now. Goodbye.